Uh, okay, hello everyone. Welcome to our next session with UPTCS and ASOIU. Our next session is about the well integrity management system, and our speaker, is Mustafa Adel Amer. Mr. Mustafa holds 2 master's degrees in Petroleum Engineering from Aberdeen University and Innovation Management from Cambridge University. Also, he is a senior petroleum engineer and a natural gas analyst with 9 huge years of experience in the upstream oil and gas sector, mainly in production, technology, managing gas assets, and otherwise. Due to this reason, I want to say that you can just use and value this session and enjoy from this session. I want to give the stage to speaker. Please, Mr. Mustafa, you can start.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you for the introduction. Good evening, everyone. Assalamu alaikum. I am Mustafa. I will take you through brief concepts of well integrity and well integrity management systems. What is well integrity? Why do we need it? Why it's important to the business? Why a well integrity management system is useful, and what are the tools and the toolkit for managing well integrity in practice? Why wells fail? We have wells made out of steel, well designed, and we have strong materials, but they fail in the end. They fail because of the interaction between design, operation environment, the rating to their equipment, the pressures, the operating conditions, and the way we treat them. Putting this all together will make the steel the very hard material that you can see on the surface, make it very brittle, make it very soft, make it corroded, and make it fail. Would it add value to track failures in wells? Imagine if you have wells that has collapsed pipes or burst tubing or leakage in the A or B annulus, and you don't know where is it, you don't know if it was fixed or not, you don't know what was bending, you don't know what was the reason. And these diseases keep spreading in your wells. Tracking failure events and tracking the reasons is one of the key steps in managing your stock to fix your wells and managing your future operations. Which wells are fixed to operate and which wells are not safe to operate and you need to take actions on. Does failures related to specific type of wells and specific reservoirs? Absolutely not. All wells fail, but with different percentages. Wells that are in conventional, unconventional, onshore, offshore reservoirs, they fail. Wells that are drilled for water injection, water production, gas injection or gas production, all of them fails. Even wells that are drilled for carbon storage, they fail. They fail because of that, as we said, because it's not just the matter of I see a solid steel on the surface, it will be solid all the time. No, it depends on the material, the operating conditions, the pressures, the temperatures, and the age of the wells, the erosion, the velocities of the fluids, and all sorts of things. What element fail the most? From a study by Richard and Davis in 2015, he found out that the majority of failures, more than 35% of failures, happen because of tubing problems, leakage in tubing, corrosion in tubing, burst in the tubing, followed by the conductor and either safety valve, casing, and wellheads, and breakdown of the rock formation. It comes at the end. So what is well integrity after this simple introduction? Well integrity is the application of technical, operational, organizational solutions to reduce risk of uncontrolled release of formation fluids throughout the life cycle of the well. So we merge technicals, operations, and organizations, how we design and how we operate our operational procedures, and how the organization behaves, how the organization deal with events. We gather them all to make sure that the wells are safe and they don't release any fluids in uncontrolled manner throughout the life of the well, through drilling, through production, through specific operations, and down through abandonment. So the goal of well integrity is to reduce risk, in technical terms, to as low as reasonably practical. Which risks we want to reduce is the risk of having uncontrolled flow from the well. We don't want the corrosive, toxic, flammable fluids to be released outside of the wellbore to the environment, because it will harm people, and it can cause severe damage, fires, and as we are going to see later. But which fluids we want to control? As we see from the definition of well integrity, it just to protect against uncontrolled release. It didn't mention whether these fluids are only flammable fluids, unflammable fluids. It's all fluids. The wells should not produce outside the environment they are producing for. So an injection well should just take injected water in the designed formation, not in all formation that the well acts several formations. A well that's producing from reservoir X, fluids should not go into reservoir Y or be released to the atmosphere. A water source well, the water should be produced to the surface water network, not to be released or leaked to the environment. So the main goal is to reduce the risk of having uncontrolled flow throughout the life cycle of the well. Well integrity should be involved in the beginning, in the end, and during the operation phase of the well. In the early stage of the well, if we get any kind of failure, it's an indication of quality of the material we choose, quality issues with the design. And if we get integrity issues at the late life of the well, it means that the degradation and the wear rate of equipment has been reached. And anything in the middle, it's a cause of the frequent stresses that the wells get subjected to. So if the tubing, for example, fails because of incompatible material, and you get corroded junctions, this could happen very, very early in the life of the well, and you can have a damaged subsurface safety valve because of the passage of the wire line through it, or you can have fluid erosion that can cause problems to the flanges and valves that they pass through at the late field life or the late life of the equipment. What do you think about the size of well integrity market as a whole? Like in the oil and gas business, the majority of people they like to work in the upstream operations, fracking, perforations, drilling, reservoir management, and all of these nice things. But we also hear about the energy transition and the potential long-term decrease in oil demand and all these energy rhetorics. The only sector that will always keep growing is well integrity. For example, in the US, they drill from 5,000 to 6,000 wells per year on annual basis. So imagine this huge number of wells after many, many years. You will end up with so many wells that reach their economic level, or they get damaged beyond fixing, or not beyond fixing, or the fixing cost would be more than the economic value that they're gonna bring. So with time, you get more and more abandoned wells. And these abandoned or failed wells, their integrity should be assured for various reasons. But how many wells are abandoned or they suffer integrity problems? In Canada, there are more than 300,000 wells that are abandoned. And these abandoned wells, they need monitoring through integrity systems. They need assurance that these wells can still don't produce any uncontrolled fluid flows. In the US, It's around 3.2 million wells. Globally, the number is not known, but it's estimated by Reuters to be 29 million wells. Bloomberg estimates 13 million wells. So the market for well integrity, for managing failed wells, abandoned wells, is growing and will always keep growing, even if the whole industry is not there. And this will not happen anytime soon, but even if. Well integrity, as we said, it offers a merge between three pillars to control the wells during the life cycle. It wants to control the safety of people, assets, and environment with technical knowledge about our wells, about our reservoirs, about our designs, and the management of rules and responsibilities of people that are involved in the system, asset management, risk management, corrective maintenance, and verification and testing of equipment. We put this all into a framework to end up with assessing the status of the wells, the severity of risks, and the priority of fixing failures whenever we get them. Well integrity management system is linked to the top top agendas of the companies through the well integrity guiding manuals. And the well integrity guiding manuals is linked to the regulations in the country you are operating in. Like, for example, if country X requires all flowing wells to be equipped with subsurface safety valve, then the company should reflect that in its well integrity management manual, and this should be put into operations. So well integrity is not just linked to the operating unit itself, but it's also governed with some guiding principles from the country where the company is operating in. What value well integrity brings to the business? The first fundamental value is ensuring safety of people and assets. Some wells are drilled close to residential areas where it could be of severe impact to have oil and gas leakages there because of the people living in the nearby. Also, it protects the environment because of offshore wells. In case you get any issues with them, the consequences could be severe for the marine life and even for the quality of air. Reducing methane emissions. As we remember, we said that we have millions and millions of wells that are abandoned globally. And there are studies that estimate that these wells emit millions of tons of methane every year. For example, the number estimated globally, the 2.5 million ton of methane per year, is equivalent to like 144 million barrels of consumed oil, or around 16 coal-fired power plants in 1 year. So the environmental impact of methane emissions coming from just abandoned wells is huge. It protects reputation, as we know in the Deepwater Horizon case in BP in the Gulf of Mexico. The company was punished by top authorities, even the US president himself. He visited the location, and as we see in the Economist headline here, it's Obama versus BP. Just one problem with cement made the president of the United States to stand against the company, and the company was forced to sell assets, and they lost money and reputation based on one well integrity event. Well integrity is one of the core fundamentals for carbon capture and storage. Storing carbon in the deep underground reservoirs means you take the collected carbon and you inject it in wells in underground storage reservoirs. So the whole cycle should be assured to not to be leaking and not to allow for any uncontrolled flows. Well integrity management system, to ensure its goals, it needs to have some components. need to take into account well designs, production data, completion data, preventive maintenance scheduling, maintenance results, roles and responsibilities, and well failure model. And we will get through them. Any question? Anyone would like to say any comments?
If there is any questions, you can write them to the chat box. I will read them for speaker, Mr. Mustafa, or you can unmute yourself also.
Or you can just interrupt and say what you would like to have, because it's better if we have some kind of interaction. Okay, so a well integrity management system, it gathers the understanding of well-designed production data, completion data, preventive maintenance, maintenance results, facility status reporting, rules and responsibilities, and who should do what and when, and well failure model. For well-designed, we need to make sure that we have barriers, and we will get through what is the definition of barriers and why do we need them, and what barrier policies should be in place and how we deal with it. For production data, we need to monitor the pressures, the wellhead pressures and the annulus pressures, because it's one of the things that can make you be aware, make you detect failures very easily. Monitoring the annulus pressures, A and B annulus pressures, over constant intervals, for example, every 2 weeks, every 1 month, and then you compare your results to make sure that you are operating below the allowable limits, and also to detect if there is an increase or decrease in any annulus, and you try to know why, because it could guide you for a potential problem, communication between tubing and annulus, or failure in one of the barriers. Completion data governs the calculation of the MASP, the maximum allowable annular surface pressure, which is the pressure if you reach, you would risk the weakest point in your completion, in your barrier. Preventive maintenance schedule is the time through which you set the preventive maintenance, which is the wellhead integrity test and the set subsurface integrity test. You do these tests over intervals. The intervals are set in the well integrity in the well integrity system to alert the organization to the need of verifying the wellhead or verifying the subsurface of wells, and to keep track of results of these verification process. Maintenance results, when you investigate them, you get to detect what's right and what's wrong. You get to detect what failures do you have and how do you deal them and how you should prioritize them. Rules and responsibilities are included in the system as well to know who should do what and when. To split the responsibility between the different technical departments and technical disciplines for the work to be coordinated and run smoothly. With failure model, it defines the urgency of the failure. It defines which failure is very urgent to fix because it has high risk, and which ones you can live with or give them more time to fix to fix. And it also defines which failures you can keep the wells open while waiting to fix them, and which wells will and which failures will force you to shut down the well. For example, if your well integrity management manual requires you to have surface control subsurface safety valve in the completion for all flowing wells, naturally flowing wells, and you get a failure in the well, for you to comply, and if the well failure model indicate that it's a high risk, you would need to shut down the well until you replace the subsurface safety valve. But for example, if you have the kill wing valve failed, and the well failure model define it as a low risk failure, and you can live with it for a year or 2 years until you fix it, you can still keep operating your wells. The last item in the toolkit is facility status reporting. If the wells reach to a specific high risk failures, you would need to inform higher authorities in the organization, like the operation manager, or even higher than this, that to alert them that that you have this number of high risk wells, and you to alert them with the necessary actions to be taken to align the organization and fix it whenever possible. But let's know this fastest. Yes, well barriers. So that one of the main things in well integrity management is defining the well barriers for the wells to know if the wells are operating safely or not. For example, in this conventional well case, we have the blue items show the primary element, the primary barrier, and the red equipment show the secondary barrier. The primary barrier is the barrier that will hold the fluids of the well in case something happens. For example, in our case, here we have the packer, we have the tubing, and we have the subsurface safety valve. In case we get any problem, these are the first to hold the fluids in the well. The secondary barrier, which is the red one, is the one that holds fluids in case the primary barrier fails. If the primary barrier of the well fails, which is the blue one, for example, you get a leakage in the tubing, you get leakage in the packer, or you get failure in the subsurface safety valve, you expect that the lower master valve, the wellhead, the Christmas tree, the cement, to hold the fluids in the well and prevent the fluids from going anywhere in any uncontrolled manner. So a barrier is an envelope of one or several dependent physical elements. It's designed to contain hydrocarbon fluids and gases and other well fluids. It's intended to prevent flow from one formation to another in the subsurface, and also flow from the well to the environment. So even the cap rock here can be considered a barrier because it prevents fluids from going up to other formations or escaping behind the formation. Here the cement is a barrier because in case we lose the primary barrier, the cement will hold to prevent the fluids from going up between the casings. Barrier elements shall be verified and tested from time to time, and this is where we're going to discuss this. The barrier philosophy. For example, in case A and case B, we have in case A a well that can flow to the surface. The well, when we shut in the well, the tubing is full of the fluids to the surface. So this well is capable to flow to the surface. This well is not capable to flow to the surface. When we shut it down, we still have distance empty, and we can have a fluid level somewhere below the Christmas tree. If well A, do you think well A has two barriers, or well B has two barriers? Which one has two barriers? For the case of well A, we only have one barrier. The barrier where you can have like your tubing and your Christmas tree, and your packer, and that's it. You have nothing else. If you lose your first barrier, it's already the Christmas tree. It's combined between both the primary and the secondary barrier. So you can't say that the tubing is a primary barrier because its elements intersect with the secondary barrier elements. But here in well B, we can consider that the fluid column is a barrier itself, because all in all, the fluids will not go out of the reservoir by themselves. So in this case, the fluid column itself, the oil fluid column in the reservoir and the well is considered as a primary barrier, and then we can take the packer and the lower master valve and the tubing as the secondary barrier. A work barrier policy, for example, for a company like Shell, states that you need to have 2 tested barriers throughout the life of the well. You need to have 2 because in case you lose one of the barriers, you don't just rely on the other one. Instead, you go to restore the barrier that fails, to have the 2 barriers along the life cycle of the well. Do we need barriers for abandoned wells?
Yes.
Absolutely. Even abandoned wells should have 2 barriers. There shall be 2 barriers available during the well activities and operations, including suspension and abandoned wells, where a pressure differential exists that may cause uncontrolled fluid flow. Even if the well is closed, it should have the proper abandonment procedure that ensures that you have 2 barriers in place. You can think of 2 barrier policy as like having 2 hats. It's sometimes called the hat over hat policy. If you lose one hat, you still have the other one, but you need to go and pick up another one. Here in this schematic, it shows the same example that we went through before, but in more illustrated manner. The primary barrier is composed of the cap rock of the reservoir, the 7-inch liner cement, and then the 7-inch liner hanger, and then the liner itself, and then you go in the tubing, and then you go to the subsurface safety valve and the gas lift valve. The secondary barrier, you go to the casing show. This is the first thing you will face, the casing show of the 958 production casing. And then you'll see the cement of this casing as well, and then the 958 casing, and then you will go to the wellhead, and then you will go to the tubing hanger, and then the Christmas tree conductor is the secondary barrier. Well integrity management system in practice. What do we do in practice? What comes and how we deal with it? First, you do something called the WET. The WET is the well integrity test. It's one of the preventive maintenance that we discussed in the well integrity toolkit. You make sure that your valves and the wellheads and the seals are in place. And yeah, to make sure that the valves are operating, the number of turns of each valve is according to standard, and the valves, they hold pressures, they are not leaking, and to make sure that the seals of the Christmas tree are not leaking. You record it, you perform it based on the schedule, based on the preventive maintenance schedule for the wet test. The SET test is the subsurface integrity test. You bring a fluid pump, and then you connect it to annulus A, and then you test the A annulus. You test it for 15 minutes or according to your procedure, and then you see if it leaks or not. If it leaks, then there is a potential problem in A annulus. Maybe you have a problem in the liner hanger, in the packer, you have leakage in the tubing, in the casing. You need to investigate later. And then you connect the pump to B annulus. And if you have C annulus, you do the same. And you test it, you record the volume of the fluid you add in to top it up, and you monitor the pressure gauge during the test to make sure it's safe and not leaking. In practice, we do the SET test every 4 years and the wet test every year. And then annulus pressure monitoring. In annulus pressure monitoring, what we do is we record on constant intervals. Like it depends if the field is monitored automatically, you can recall these data every day. But if the field if the data is manually collected, it usually takes efforts for people to go to well locations and collect the gauges, and usually like within two weeks to 1 month. You record A annulus, B annulus, C annulus, tubing head pressure over time, and you keep track of them. If there is a change, then this implies failure in one of the items. Maybe you have leakage behind the casing. Maybe fluids are. Maybe you have vacuum and you lose the fluids in the well. Maybe from monitoring it, maybe you have communication. And whenever you get an annulus excursion, whenever you get pressure in the annulus higher than what you usually get from the well, what you do is you can do an annulus investigation, where you release the fluids from the well, from the annulus that has high annulus pressure. You monitor the fluid type that's coming, the volume that you get at what time, and you record the decrease in pressure to monitor if it's serious or not. Maybe if you get hydrocarbon from the annulus, it could be a severe issue. And if the pressure in the annulus and the tubing, they respond together, then you have communication between the tubing and annulus. This information is just for you to put it into the context. We can't in a few minutes cover all of these items in place. We just touch on them, and then we put them into the right block for you to capture the whole system and how it works. After we perform our annulus pressure monitoring exercise, the wet, the set, the annulus pressure, we said we do it monthly. The wet, we do it every year, and the set, we do it every 4 years. Then we combine the failure histories we have in the system. When the mast reached its safe limit, we look at the previous failure reports. We look at when operations were performed on the wells, when corrective actions were completed. If we have failure trends in specific wells, like for example in one of the fields, what we used to get is loss of containment in A annulus. We lose the integrity of the 958 casing. Why? Because we have corrosive water behind the casing, shallow corrosive water that cause corrosion to the casing and cause failure. And that was trending in the same field. Like this problem happened in 4 wells about the same age. So we expect that you have a trend here, and you try to even react to the other wells before the situation gets worse. Or maybe you add you top up more cement when you set your casing. You take into consideration as well the status of the well. Is it a high producer or low producer? Because if the well is high producer and you want to shut the well down for operation, usually it's difficult to do so. It depends on the company and its target. Look at the mass, the completion data, the reservoir data, and you look at also what future operations should be performed on the well, because the integrity status of the well could impact how things should go on the well. And risk assessment considerations. When you perform your exercise and you get the data from the test you perform, and you study the history and the failures and the status of the wells, you try to assess the risk of the well. Is this well is a high risk or a low risk well? And what you take in consideration, you take location, outflow potential, well stream composition, external environment, and redundant systems. For location, you need to know if the well is onshore or offshore, manned or unmanned. For example, if the well is offshore and you have a failed subsurface safety valve and the well is capable to float to the surface, that could be an issue. You need to make sure that people are safe, because in case you lose fluids and you don't have the subsurface safety valve in the well, could be a severe case. and proximity of the well to other wells. Outflow potential is the ability of the well fluid to flow to the surface at the outflow potential. You can consider it as like if we lose the Christmas tree of the well, how much fluids are gonna be coming out of the well. In the worst case scenario, if we lose the Christmas tree and the well is producing to the atmosphere, how much the well is gonna produce? It's a useful piece of information because it tells you the severity of the top case. The top case is that your well is just producing to the atmosphere. Workstream composition. Do you have sour fluids? Do you have corrosive fluids? You have poisonous components. External environment, you need to take into account the external corrosion to the environment. You have fatigue of the components, mechanical impact and possible collisions with vehicles. Like for example, in one of the fields in the Western Desert, one of the mitigation actions on one of the fields was to have a fence, steel fence around the well to prevent cars from hitting in the well at night. Redundant systems, it's like automatic shutdown systems. Do we have automatic shutdown systems on the wells or not? Because if you have a case where you lose control of the well and you have an automatic shutdown system, it could be better. For example, if the production valve is leaking and it's visual that the production valve is leaking, and you have an automatic lower master valve, you can shut down the automatic master valve. But if you don't have it and the well is producing fluid that's high H2S content, it could be a severe case and people could survive. So we mixed the data that we collected from the annulus pressure monitoring with the wellhead integrity test, with the subsurface integrity test, with the technical data, events, failure history, with our risk assessment considerations, which is an art. This is how you assess the risk. We merge it with our well failure model to assign action codes and correction plans. But what is the well failure model? Well failure model is a risk-based matrix. It defines causes and effects of failure types and different types of wells, and it gives them the action codes. A well failure model, like the template we have here. We have the failures that we expect to have, and we have the types of wells. This is actually a schematic of a real well failure model. You put the types of wells you have. For example, we classify them as high pressure gas, low pressure oil, high pressure oil, and water injector wells. And then we put the failures that we encounter. For example, is it a single surface failure or multiple surface failure, or single subsurface failure or multiple of both? For example, if you have failure in the wing valve, in the swab valve, and the upper master valve, how critical it is for a gas well to oil well to water injector to high pressure gas well. For example, if you have a problem in the swab valve that you can just open and connect the pressure gauge to read the pressure on the Christmas tree. If you lose it in a well, it's not a major incident. But if you lose the lower master valve, it's a thing. If you have multiple failures, for example, if you lose the upper and lower master valves in high pressure gas well, it's high priority to be fixed. For example, if you lose that for a water injector well, it's less priority, so you give it smaller number. If you have tubing to annulus communication and high pressure gas well, it's high action code. You need to fix it. You need to fix it sooner, and you give it high priority to fix. A well failure model action code can be interpreted as follows. It depends on the organization. Each organization define it differently. For example, if the well has 0 action code, it means that the well is fine, everything is tested and perfect. If the well has action code of 1, repair it in the next planned intervention. If you have, for example, this well, if you are planning to change the completion in 4 years, okay, go in 4 years and change it, and you don't need to take any urgency. For example, action code of 6, repair at the earliest opportunity, but within 2 months. And it gives the possibility for the well to flow. Okay, it gives you the possibility. Okay, if you have a problem in the tubing to air analyst communication in low pressure oil well, okay, you can give it action code 6 because you can fix it in 2 months. But if you have it in a gas well, maybe you give it action 10 of 8 or 9. 8, you need to carry out formal technical review within 7 days, and then you can fix the well at the earliest opportunity. 10, emergency response. It's خلاص, you have severe failures, and 9, make well safe immediately and repair immediately. You need to move your rigs. Why it's not easy to do the fixing of wells and repair them? It's because you take resources of the company. The rigs are there to install ESPs, to upgrade pumps, to repair completions of high producing wells. But when well integrity comes and you have a failure, you need to reallocate these resources from doing operations that will bring production gain and make the company meet its target to go to fix some of the wells to ensure safety. I think that can be enough for today. Like it took so long. I still have long material, but I feel like it will be a long tiring session. Can we have questions if you guys would like to ask something?
Thank you so much, Mr. Mustafa, for this valuable session and excellent explanation about well integrity systems.
Yeah, thank you. Hope it was valuable, and
Yeah, sure.
I hope if any of you guys have any question, any comment, any concern, anything you didn't like about the presentation, I would be very happy to hear your response.
I see one question at the chat box. I read it for you.
Hi guys, I have a question. I don't know if you can hear me.
Yes, please.
Hi Mustafa. My name is Lester Eiffel, all the way from the Caribbean region, Trinidad and Tobago.
Ah, cool. Yeah, nice to have you.
Okay, let me ask you a question. As it relates to the topic at hand, well, integrity management. 2 words, information and data. With respect to information, and I'm asking this question from a reliability engineering standpoint. Whereas with information, which is generating the input, which is the process. I'm talking about here, the operational procedures, resources, etc. As compared to data, and let's look at the data as being the output. And we know we're talking about generating unorganized and unrefined facts from a particular field. Let's say a field of probably about 7 wells.
Okay.
So we generate that output. And now you have to clean that data to get insight. Absolutely. On that particular field. My question to you is, with respect to integrity well management, which one would be more important in making sound decisions? The aspect of the information, the input, which is the process, or the data, which is the output to generate insights?
Which is, you want to ask which is more important to the company or to making integrity decisions, or
integrity decisions?
Integrity, you know, it can't be dislinked. Like if you need to have facts, you need to have the information, right?
Right.
And you need to have the data through
Right.
which you can gather insights, like the example we gave about the field where we found that we lost the 9/5/8 inch casing because we have corrosive water behind the casing.
Right.
We found that in 3 wells, 3 water injector wells, and we have 10 other injectors in the field with the same design, with the same access to the same formation.
Mm-hmm.
From that insights, from that we got from the data, that trend, we managed to secure the other wells. You can scrap the casing, you can take your mitigation action, you can try to put corrosion inhibitors in the water you inject, whatever you would do, but that give you guidance to react. Waiting for facts alone, you will wait for other wells to fail for you to react to them. But insights and facts together usually are the ones for you to proceed forward, and that in a good process. If the process is dislinked, if someone is excluded, for example, the process aligns, because in well integrity, so many people should be aligned. You need to have your field manager with the production manager aligned, with the operation manager aligned, with the well integrity team, with the asset team.
Mm-hmm.
All of them should agree on fixing a well, and all of them should agree on removing resources to do specific operation. So if the process is not solid, you will get into subjective assessment from each one of them. That's why the concept of well failure model and action codes has been in place, because this is the failure. The failure is saying that we need to fix it in a month. All of us, we need to combine our efforts to fix it in a month. So it's a process.
Okay,
so
understood.
We can't know which one is of higher priority, or maybe I didn't understand your question correctly. But
right, no, I think you did. I understand.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you.
Okay, sure.
Mr. Mustafa, we have some questions at the chat box. Can you read them?
Yes. What are the investigation techniques to identify leak source? Depends where you get the leak from. For example, if I have high A annulus pressure, what would I need to investigate here? I need to make an annulus investigation. What you do is you open the annulus and you monitor the fluid leakage and the pressure drop. You monitor if it's going to be topped up again or not. If it does, and you see that your tubing pressure is constant, and then you deplete the tubing pressure and the tubing pressure remains constant, then you don't have communication issue. You have a problem in the annulus itself, away from the tubing. So maybe fluids are sneaking behind the packer is leaking. Maybe you have high pressure gas well, and the gas is leaking behind the packer. If you get gas from the annulus, but if you don't get gas from the annulus, then maybe leakage in the one of the casing shoes, maybe the casing itself is leaking from one of the surface water formations. That's why you need to collect this fluid and see its salinity, analyze it, and if it's hydrocarbon. So these are the sort of things that make you investigate the leakage and its source. Also, you need to look at the mud log. You need to know which formations are producing the fluid you found. Maybe you have a surface gas formation, and you know that your cement is not usually good in this area, or you got cavity while not cavity, you got a bigger hole while drilling, and you don't think the cement fill it completely. So this is the sort of analysis you need to know. For example, you go and perform your set test. the well is fine. You don't see any pressures on the annulus and anything. And you go, you do your set test in B annulus, and you find yourself pumping. So you don't get anything. So your fluid that you are injecting is leaking. So you don't have completion fluid in the tubing itself, in the B annulus itself. So from these interactions with the well and your experience with the area and the data available to you, you get to know these sort of things. And if you get suspicious at some point, so for example, I expect that the casing is leaking or the casing is corroded, you need to know, you need then to go to make corrosion logs to know the thickness of the casing, if you lost it or not.
Okay.
Huh?
Sorry?
No, sorry. You can continue.
Okay.
Yeah. So you have a question. I see that you are taking the floor, so you can go
fine,
on.
thanks.
Yeah. Okay.
And also there's some other questions. If you want, I can read them for you.
Huh? What can I do if A annulus hold and B producing the surface behind cellar? This one I can't tell. Sorry, I can't tell. Producing what? Producing hydrocarbons or producing water? RIE, I'm not sure what is that. No, I haven't faced this issue, to be honest. Can't tell. Producing brine. Maybe you have an active surface formation water, and you don't have good cement in the P annulus. It depends as well where the B annulus is connected to the formations and the mud log. Is it cemented behind it? You trust the cement, you don't trust the cement. It's, any more questions? Like we can be done by now, or if anyone would like to have one question, we can go for it.
Also, if you will have any questions, you can ask at group or me, and we will ask these questions to the speaker and try to get the answer after the session, maybe.
Inshallah. I hope it was useful, and anyone would like to discuss
Hello, Mustafa.
more?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Hello, I'm Oscar. How's it doing?
ازيك عسكر عامل ايه؟
Habibi, nice presentation. Good work.
Thank you. شكرا حبيبي ربنا يبارك فيك.
I have a few questions if you don't mind. For
Yeah,
the primary and secondary barriers that you showed us in the schematic, these barriers, is it valid for the well in shutting condition and the producing condition? The blue and red lines.
This one? This one?
The schematic with envelopes. Yeah, this one.
This one. Yeah, sorry. You think it's you ask, is it valid for a well in flowing condition and closing condition?
Yeah.
I
or
didn't
it will
ask
be
myself this.
different?
I didn't ask myself this question, but I feel like it will be the same.
Okay, right. But if you
Or
are flowing the well, if you are flowing the well on the production header, your fluids will be getting inside the flow line and the header, and it will not be contained under the surface safety valve. So I think, in my opinion, this is valid for just a shut-in condition. And the flow condition will be other barriers like the flow line itself. The flow line.
No, yeah, the other barriers of the flow line is another story. We just want to make sure that the wells flowing from the well, that the fluids flowing from the well are controlled. But the flow line to the facilities, it's another story as I see it.
Right.
Or you guys deal with it in a different way in GAPCO.
Yeah, we have different methodology. We have some details about this issue, but I think you are right about this point. But this is really a good schematic to illustrate the condition and the principle of barriers, which is primary and secondary barriers and envelopes that contain the fluids inside the well.
Yeah, and even if we look here, I think it's the valves here are in closed mode. Subsurface safety valve is closed, and here the lower master valve is closed.
A second question for the upper and lower master valve. You have the upper is actuated, which is a systematic one, or both of them will be actuated, the upper and lower master valve?
Only one. Usually in Babetco we have the lower master valve actuated.
So for that you are speaking about the lower master valve is more important than the upper master.
The lower master is more important.
Yeah, because it is actuated, not a manual.
Yeah.
But in other companies, they may use the upper master valve like actuated, and the lower will be a manual and will not be closed in any production situation, just in emergency. You should close the manual lower master valve, and the upper master is automatic, just in case if you have a leakage in the flow line, if you have some emergency situation, the actuated one will be closed.
Okay. No, we in Babetco we have the lower master valve is actuated. So I even didn't ask myself this question. So thank you for the illustration. That's a very good point. I didn't get to know this before.
Thank you, Mustafa. I may have some points about the questions that was asked about the biannulus fluids, which is prime.
Yes, please. Okay.
You may have some investigation actions like making some logs, some logs that have leak detection capabilities that can use ultrasound methodologies that can hear behind the casing. You can detect the depth of the leakage just for knowledge, and some methods for well intervention. Some few companies now supply tools to intervene in the biannulus between two casings and dump some cement. If you know the top of cement, the depth of it, you can like lay down a hose between the two casings and make it like tag the top of cement and pump some gel, some sealant, some sort of gel or cement, a special one, just a special fluid which is more dense than water, which will be present in the annulus. This dense fluid will get segregated under the fluid in the annulus and make a good seal, like a ring between the two casings. This is for remedial work. And if you want to keep the well as it is, it's just a water between the two casings. You just keep the pressure in the annulus as it is. If you bleed this fluid, it will enhance and induce more fluid production between the two casings. And if you keep the pressure to build up above the mass pressure, it will be a problem. So the least action to be made for this situation, just to monitor the pressure in periodic intervals and bleed the pressure if it's get high above upper limit, or just to keep it above lower limit, not to induce more fluids. Just monitoring if it's just a saline water, you wanted to keep an eye on it and make your pressures contained and safe between the two casings, not to impose high pressure to affect your facilities. Just some notes you can consider in your decision about monitoring and assessing the risk for these wells.
Well done, Oscar. ربنا يبارك فيك.
حبيبي. Good presentation, and wish you the best in your career and your sessions.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Mohammed. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Sorry, guys. Can we stop here, and maybe we can do another session where we can go in depth of the well integrity management system from the system itself into the technicals and how we can calculate the mass, how we can look at a case study to assess what risk should we consider, how we can solve it, what more investigations do we need, and how we can do them.
Yes, of course. Thank you so much for your all and your time. A great explanation. Thank you so much.
ربنا يبارك فيك. Thank you. And thank you guys for holding on to it and for your valuable questions and interventions. Shukran.
Thank you.
Bye bye. Have a nice day. Salam alaikum.
Have a nice day. Bye-bye.